Forgetfulness is not just a vis inertia as superficial as people believe, but is rather an active ability to suppress, to shut the doors and windows of consciousness for a while, not to be bothered by the noise and battle with which our underworld of serviceable organs work with and against each other. I said, is the benefit of active forgetfulness like a doorkeeper or guardian of mental order, rest, and etiquette, from which we can immediately see how there could be no happiness, cheerfulness, hope, pride, immediacy without forgetfulness? The person in whom this apparatus of suppression is damaged can be compared to a dysopaedic. He cannot cope with anything. This necessarily forgetful animal, in whom forgetting is a strength, has bred for himself a counter device, memory, with the help of which forgetfulness can be suspended in certain cases. It is instead an active desire not to let go, a desire to keep on desiring what has been, on some occasion desired. Really, it is the will's memory. This is an excerpt of quotes compiled directly from the work
Genealogy of Morals,
authored by one of the most renowned philosophers of all of history, Friedrich Nietzsche. While Nietzsche was more known for his critical views of European religion and morality, his take on the overall idea of what people internalize memory and forgetfulness to be are far deeper and much more haunting and disturbed than what we typically summarize it as. Hence, taking me to the point of this video, the power of forgetting, or merely the effects of our mind's almost subconscious ability to choose to do so, and how this so negatively impacts our quality of life and ability to truly digest and move on from the very matter or experience in which we choose to lose the memory of. And there's no better way I could start this off than by tying the correlation of Nietzsche's 19th century interpretation of forgetfulness with the movie that released just this past month, Blink Twice.
Blink twice and I'm in danger.
And before I go on, yes, this will contain spoilers of the film as well as a trigger warning. Like, literally the opening scene of the movie is Amazon MGM Studios issuing a trigger warning for the audience, as some of the themes in the movie involve assault and other forms of violence. If you have not watched it and plan on doing so, or are highly sensitive to such extreme subject matter, you have been warned.
Anyway, I just want this time around you to be a little bit more invisible, okay?
Okay.
Released on August 23rd, 2024, directed by actor Zoe Kravitz, Blink Twice serves as a psychological thriller that follows cocktail waitress Frida, played by Naomi Aki, who through working as a cocktail waitress at a fundraising gala meets the host, billionaire tech mogul Slater King, played by every middle-aged white woman's fantasy, Channing Tatum. After a hasty yet flirtatious encounter, Slater invited Frida to up and leave the country to join him and his seemingly lifelong acquaintances on a lavish getaway to a private island. Despite only speaking to the man for like an hour, his celebrity status, nonchalant demeanor, and natural good looks, Frida, along with her best friend and co-worker Jess, played by Aaliyah Shawkat, rationalize the trip as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and jump at the chance to go on Epstein Island. On the private island. This is where an alarming number of events begin to play out, but not before the seeds of what was to come had been planted in retrospect. Vis inertiae is a Latin phrase that translates to the force of inactivity. It's where in physics refers to the body's inability to move itself when it's at rest, or to stop moving when it's in motion. Most people on a surface level look at forgetfulness as merely something that is just a consequence of a lack of repetition, or the mind's inability to recollect due to the information or experience itself being far too gone. But when discussing the importance of memory and the conscious mind in his essays, he believes the idea of forgetfulness being the conscious mind's way to suppress memory, as he says, shut the doors and windows of consciousness for a while. This would be a harrowing theme that would deliver itself all throughout the subconsciousness of the film. Clearly not being in the most ideal of situations,
I need a fucking vacation.
Frida would go on to miss the bus, causing her to be late on the night of the fundraiser, leading for her to be briefed by her boss, who gives her the clear direction to become more invisible. After the events of last year's gala, to which Frida mumbles out,
No. Can you talk to me? You told me you like my nails.
Anyway.
All throughout the beginning of the movie, Frida would be seen oogling at the tech founder, displaying a sheepish desire and lust for someone who she has seemingly been keeping tabs on, going as so far to say,
You're gonna sprain your neck.
I don't care if I break it.
even through the beginning phases of the movie, the theme of memory and forgetfulness would appear throughout, signified by Jess's lighter being constantly forgotten by Frida and her coworker, to when venting about her feelings concerning Jess's boyfriend makes the statement,
I'm not mad, I just can't magically erase shit from my brain.
Going back to Nietzsche's quote about forgetfulness being used as a form of suppression, Frida's near fantasization of Slater King is her mind's way of attempting to suppress reality in the image of being with or being around Slater, a little Gen Z term that many people refer to as celebrity worship. Is typically the act of fans or media alike to essentially platform and place celebrities on a higher pedestal than the average person, holding them to a different set of standards while also glorifying their every word and action. Just like Frida, many people who are dissatisfied with their own life or shortcomings choose to idolize or fantasize about a specific celebrity, or choose to live their life vicariously through the thoughts and actions of other people or movements. Just take, for example, the power of certain figures on their correlating demographic. The Pokemans or the Duke Dennises of the internet, the effect of rap music and gang violence on African American children.
Big B, Lil B, Slime, YSL, Crip Killer.
The various political and social movements that trend towards wokeism than actual activism. As life becomes more difficult for the average person to socially, economically, and financially teeter, people are often abandoning their values and losing a sense of their true nature with the attempt to distract themselves with the grandeur and allure of something shinier to suppress their reality. While to most this scene of lust is harmless, it goes on to lay the foundation of the poor decision making that Frida would engage in later in the movie. Frida and Jess would then slip out of their work clothes into dresses to cameo as guests to more seamlessly blend in with the crowd. Something I literally still don't understand as to why they did, just because as they try to dodge coworkers who are actually on the clock working, any one of them could easily snitch on the both of them to cause them to lose their jobs, but fuck it. I guess, she did say,
You told me you like my nails.
After marching forward with the tunnel vision of a Get Out character, Frida would trip over air, causing her to embarrassingly fall flat on her face, to which, upon looking up, she would stare right in the face of security, who would escort her out the building and fire her from her job. Or that's how the events of the movie should have gone. Instead, the man that would help her up would be none other than Mr. Oogly Eyes himself, Mike Lane. Slater King. Sorry, I get the roles mixed up sometimes. They share this sort of nuanced moment to where it's like they're meeting each other for the first time, when it becomes easy to forget how Frida had hinted at a meeting in a previous year's gala when her manager mentioned her to become more invisible. A fact that is all the more alarming when Frida says,
You got all that? It's a bit of a whirlwind.
Oh yeah, no, I have an excellent memory.
The film would then cut to a montage of Frida and Jess enjoying their night, bonding with Slater's friends, laughing, enjoying endless glasses of champagne, and I guess dancing, or whatever you would call this, with the night coming to an end as Slater informs Frida of his impending trip to a private island.
You guys want to come?
It's like the equivalent of me or you meeting Rihanna, doing a meet and greet at your job, and then after some small talk, you take her up on her offer to fly across the country to join her and her elitist friends on her private island. I see some of you actually thinking about it too, and y'all are the same ones that would get killed first in any of these horror movies. Tying this back to the second part of Nietzsche's quote, to shut the doors and windows of consciousness for a while. Frida's eagerness to not only be in the presence of an attractive and excessively rich billionaire, but her sheer willingness to up and leave her job and her life to accompany him on a private island is her attempt to do such that. To shut the doors and windows of consciousness. AYTM is a software company that specializes in detailed research, finding that just over 56% of Americans will be taking a vacation this year, with a further 65% believing that they do not take enough time off of work in the first place. Many of us use vacation as a way to shut off our own consciousness for days or weeks at a time to remove ourselves from the stress, the workload, and the reality of our work/personal life. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of wanting a vacation, the idea and the intention behind the desire is very telling of one's own personal life and intrinsic thoughts. It is this insistence of many now to simply require a vacation or a break from life's mundane routine so frequently and so often that signifies such a larger issue in the background. The constant need to suppress the reality to live another, the sheer act of forgetting the present moment to experience another.
So do you think the human sacrifice is before or after dinner?
Hopping off the private jet and being welcomed by the tropical breeze, the group lines up before entering the house, being presented with the bag that is offered for the group to put their phones
you don't want to do it.
Earlier in the movie, Slater was being interviewed about stepping down as CEO of his billion-dollar company, King Tech. In this interview, he goes on to reveal the purchase of a very expensive private island, essentially a mental utopia free of phones, work, artificial foods, and things of that nature. Everyone would candidly turn in their phones except for Jess, who is understandably hesitant before eventually giving in. Despite a few very odd occurrences.
Excuse me, do you know where we're supposed to go?
And some even odder encounters.
What?
Yeah, more on that later. Immediately with the disposing of their cellular device of all attendees, we are diving headfirst into Nietzsche's idea of active forgetfulness. With how smartphones have become a literal extension of the human limb, the very act of getting rid of such an important part of your daily life is the very doorkeeper or guardian of mental order. The active forgetfulness of what expectations others have of us, the need to keep up with the Joneses, the need to obtain a certain image online for everyone to regard you as, the need to remain informed and be kept updated to avoid the fear of missing out. All of these expectations that we subconsciously hold in our mind every time we send a text, post a picture, give our thoughts in the comments, in a swift moment to be tossed down into a red bag to be momentarily forgotten. So many people are making videos or leaving comments about a social media detox or celebrities announcing lengthy breaks from the public view in order to remove that guardian in hopes of experiencing happiness, cheerfulness, hope, and pride and immediacy. It's the very act of actively forgetting one's social responsibility, flat out rejecting it for days or weeks at a time for mental solitude. And this very act in the movie is no different. It is here when we get a full introduction of the movie's main characters, most of them not really too notable as they're too busy getting higher than the clouds themselves. For the sake of the argument, the only characters other than Frida, Jess, and Slater King that you really need to remember is Sarah, an ex-survival reality contestant who, while is very easy on the eyes, is also an extreme smartass who seems to take exception to Frida and Slater's budding romance. And another character is Stacy, who I guess is Slater's manager. I don't know, she just kind of seemed a little too loopy to give manager.
So,
the vape liquid, put it in your desk.
All right.
One more.
Yeah.
Earlier on, we get an introduction into the past trauma at the expense of both Frida and Slater, with Frida expressing her displeasure with the idea of therapy, referring to it as
Self-indulgent bullshit.
acknowledging how her mother had tried to get herself in front of her, with the tone switching from a giddy, out-of-her-depths girl to a cold, nihilistic demeanor, showing the audience just how deeply this event affected her psyche. Slater would then express to her how, while he does attend therapy, that his therapy is unorthodox and leans more towards trauma therapy, dealing with repressed memory.
What can't you remember?
Pretty much anything before 10.
Take note, because this is be very important later. This brings us to the concept of what is known as tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is a Latin phrase often translated to clean slate, or quite literally, scraped tablet. This is essentially the idea of an absence of a preconceived notion or ideas, or an individual who's born without built-in mental content and derives their knowledge from later on experiences. Think of it as someone whose memory is erased and gets thrown back into society. With Slater, it's almost no different. Seeing as how people of all backgrounds experience trauma at some sort of level, with death, violence, substance abuse, and illness being forever a part of the world we live in, it's only natural for some to experience greater levels of trauma than others. And with how incredibly different we process that information, with some growing up to be world leaders and others growing up to be serial killers, there is no telling of what the effect one trauma might have on an individual versus the other. Here it is evident from Slater's past, along with how Frida and the media described him, that his trauma and negative experiences have affected him so deeply to the point of them becoming repressed in his own mind, needing the assistance of a therapist to process it. And with him stepping down as CEO of his company, the purchase of the island, and his openness to the intentional use of drugs, all of these variables serve as Slater's tabula rasa, a way for him to approach his life now with a clean slate. Frida would respond to this by saying,
Why would you want to remember? I pay to forget.
Once again, except this time with her words instead of her actions, Frida's fascination with Slater and her willingness to go on this trip and to do away with her phone are all steps towards practicing active forgetfulness. And over the first couple of nights, or what we assume is a couple, both Frida and Jess are having the times of their lives. The days are filled with lounging in the sun, sipping champagne, eating the freshest food from the best culinary minds, all while barely having to lift a finger. Filling Jess with happiness, cheerfulness, hope, pride, and immediacy that she could not have achieved without the use of forgetfulness. Both physically and metaphorically, this forgetfulness would be a tool that would be weaponized against Frida to show you and the audience that not everything or everyone is always what it is made to be.
Can't you feel it? There's something wrong with this place.
As the days continue to blend together and the movie places more emphasis on this guy's missing pinky, more instances of foreshadowing would continue to reoccur. For someone with such a great memory,
I have an excellent memory.
and a past that had come to shape them, Frida can't seem to remember how she got such a noticeable scar across the side of her head. Jess's lighter would keep being forgotten, and weird instances such as a meat stain from her dress at dinner disappearing and her nails being caked in dirt. Even when on the surface level everything appears to be great, the past trauma Frida wears mentally and only lightly referenced couldn't help but rear its ugly head.
Something horrible is about to happen. Our days are good. That's when the bad stuff happens.
When observing Frida's actions with Nietzsche's quote, it is easy to say that her ability to fully suppress her forgetfulness is not as solidified as what was once presented, and the cracks in her emotional stability, by then beginning to question the trip itself, shows her apparatus for suppression is indeed damaged. To compare her to a dysapetic, one must first understand what a dysapetic is. A dysapetic is a person defined as someone suffering from indigestion of irritability, and in the same sense of the quote, this dyspepsia, this inability to truly cope with her past leads her to believe that with all the good coming out of this trip, the forgetfulness, the luxury, the euphoria, that with all the good happening, bad things are only waiting right around the corner. Most of us fall into the same line of thinking as Frida, a line of thinking that is virtually free from accountability and places the emphasis on the world almost having it out to get you. As self-indulgent as therapy seems to be for Frida, the basic idea that something bad will happen because something good is happening is essentially fruit from the same poisonous tree. This attitude towards life is self-indulgent in its own right, as while many of us don't have control over the trauma we experience or the circumstances under which we are raised in, the way in which we proceed to deal with this trauma is reflective of the life that we currently live. As I stated in the last section, humans process their trauma in a number of ways, and the way in which mind formulates itself as a result of such trauma is no different. For Frida, she processes her trauma like many of us do, in forgetfulness. We achieve this state of forgetfulness by using substances, binge eating, binge watching, gambling, pornography, video games, etc. This is her broken way of coping with things that do not work out for her. Her line of thinking is her mind's way of explaining to herself why these things continue to happen. It is natural for us to create monikers or parables that we tell ourselves that helps us process events that have had such a profound effect on us. Everything happens for a reason. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. A simple phrase that beyond the surface can almost completely tell you the mindset of any individual. It isn't ironic that most people who you hear succeed in this life are the people who refuse to lay down, refuse to give up, and maintain a persistence even in hardship with the belief that things over time will get better. Frida looks to be on the other end of the spectrum, believing life's curveballs to be expected and life's blessings to have a catch to it. As normal, another night would pass on the island, drinks were flowing, music was in the air, and marijuana filled the lungs of all parties involved. Until... yeah. All throughout the movie, Slater has these workers employed to kill the infestation of snakes he has slithering around the premises. After taking a few minutes to cool down, Frida and Jess share a tense conversation, with Jess expressing her concern over the happy-go-lucky, almost cultish-like cheerfulness that everyone exudes. But the response that Frida gives is surprising, but even more indicative of just how far her true desire is willing to go.
For the first time in my life, I'm here, and I'm not invisible, so please.
This not only reinforces the idea that this trip is used as a getaway from her undesirable, insufficient livelihood, but it also reveals another aspect of Frida's dark psychology, feeling invisible. It's no secret that everyone wants to stand out from one another. Everyone wants to feel a part of the group or social circle, to truly feel valued. It's a part of every single person's inner psychology. From birth, we desire the nourishment that only our mothers can provide, and as we grow up and begin to experience life, we look for cliques or groups to become a part of to quench the needs for a sense of belonging. It is natural. It's the part of us that we desire in order for us to define our own identity to ourselves and the world to explain who we are. And for Frida, who lacks such an identity, will turn to others for validation. It's why, as I said earlier about the different ways people choose to attempt to cope with things, Frida uses others as a way to fill the void she feels so deeply within. From her vehemently questioning the foundation of Jess's relationship with her boyfriend at work, to her eagerness to go on the trip in the first place with the celebrity in which she would fantasize over, Frida needs the validation and the attention of others to fill the voids inside her. After begging Jess to stay, she eventually goes along with it, but as the night continues, the film would cut to an ominous shot of Jess staring menacingly at the house with blood dripping from her nose, setting up the biggest twist of the movie and turning Frida's apparatus of suppression into her greatest weapon.
It doesn't make any sense, but I feel like we're forgetting like a lot of stuff.
Frida wakes up and enters the villa. this time with no Jess to accompany her before stumbling into a room of wet bags. It's here when she sees the Red Rabbit lady, who tells her to remain quiet while offering her mysterious green liquid. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not about to just drink a half-filled, unlabeled, greenish tint liquid that is being offered to me by a lady who can't even give me her name.
What's your name?
But to each their own. Like, obviously that shit was going to be nasty, but when Frida questions her where it came from, she slowly pulls back the cover to reveal a dead snake. If that doesn't tell you it's time to go, I don't know what will. It's at this moment that later on in the day, when Frida will go to sleep, that she begins to have flashes of distress. She envisioned a girl running and just holding a knife saying, "Hide this," all while having a nosebleed and once again having her nails caked in dirt. It is in the morning where each of the girls look like they are recovering from the world's biggest hangover, each sporting noticeable dishevelment and bruising. It only takes Frida, I don't know, a few hours to realize that her best friend is gone. Now that I think of it, I'm not sure about this Frida character. Nonetheless, it seems like Frida is the only one who remembers who Jess is, which is incredibly odd since they've all been on the island for like at least 5 days already.
Who is Jess?
Frida has a little mini episode before getting a knock at the door, being greeted by Sarah, the same one who, if Stank was a person, it would be her middle fucking name, showing Frida the lighter, which sparks a conversation between the two about the cautious signs that have been popping up over the past couple of days. The encounter between both Frida and Sarah once again directly correlates to Nietzsche's point on the forgetful animal. Looking at this quote once more, Frida, having used forgetfulness as her main strength, now in turmoil, chooses to suspend this action and uses the counter device of memory to combat it. Sarah herself reveals that she personally doesn't know anyone who accompanied them on the trip, only being drawn into the lure of Slater King through one of his friends who she had met at a coffee shop. The realization of both Frida and Sarah's desires and the true blinded nature of what's guiding them hits both women with a dark yet grim reality.
Oh what the fuck were we thinking? Fuck!
Both characters have suspended their forgetfulness, suspended their subconscious desires that led them to this trip, in replacement of memory and what they believe will aid them in discovering the true nature of the trip. Relating this back to life, people in whom forgetting is a strength are often unable to rationalize the then pros and cons of any present situation. Most are willing to look past the overwhelming negatives and see the past issues that will present themselves in favor of the prospect of fulfilling their desires. In this case, both women have joined a young, attractive billionaire that they barely know on a trip of a lifetime without really evaluating the obvious that they don't even know this person, and despite being a public figure, they have no control over what could happen to them. The memory you have of calculating risks, keeping your guard up, following the mantra, too good to be true, often leave the heads of most people when being in a situation in which they see the reward as too favorable. The Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, responsible for consumer protection and the enforcement of the antitrust law, states that just last year, they received a little over 2.6 million fraud reports, totaling a loss of around $10 billion alone from consumers. Every day, people are drawn by the aura of celebrities, questionable facts, and attractive products and lucrative promises, to which, when appealing enough to the right person at the right time, leads for them to almost forget what they've always been known to be true, in hopes of striking gold with what it is they seek. And more often than not, you end up in situations like Sarah and Frida. Slater's ominous words
Maybe forgetting is a gift.
probe the two to take a deeper look into what's going on behind the scenes as they both begin to question the intentions of their host. Frida would summarize that with her new partner, the venom in the snakes, the same ones infesting the property, is part of the reason that they can both see truth and partly remember, prompting both of them along with the other girls to knock back shots of tequila mixed with snake venom. After searching for her phone and seeing some questionable images, the effects of the snake venom would begin to take place, providing more flashbacks for Frida, who now vividly recalls the night where Jess was killed as a result of her not being able to forget. And with this revelation and the now immediate need to get the fuck out of here, we turn to Nietzsche's closing argument that ties in conclusion of the film with the true desire of Frida all along.
There is no forgiveness. There's just forgetting.
Sooner than later, the venom would begin to kick in on all of the ladies, leading to an eventful night to say the least, with the girls extracting their revenge, going on a murderous rampage, killing 2 of the guys but also losing 2 in the process, leaving Frida and Sarah to take on Slater himself. Even confronting another victim in the form of Slater's manager, she refuses to protest the ongoing events, once again reiterating,
"Forgetting is a gift, hon,"
before ultimately being killed. During the encounter, it would be revealed through a picture that Frida had already been there before, replaying her first trip on the island where she tried to escape, only to be caught by Slater himself, explaining to us the origin of the scar, the lady referring to herself as Red Rabbit, the man with the missing finger, and the consistent compliments she would get about her nails.
I like your nails.
You told me you like my nails.
Slater would go into this introspective conversation with Frida, detailing the pointlessness of being sorry and offering one of the most memorable moments of the movie.
Sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry!
Highlighting the point that despite saying he is sorry, forgetfulness is not something to be given to everyone, no matter how sorry the individual is, leading for his conclusion that there is no forgiveness, only forgetting. This ideology of Slater is easily one of the most interesting of the movie, as it allows for the audience to, for a moment, question the actions of Slater and people in their own personal lives to discern whether or not they are deserving of forgiveness, and makes them even begin to question, even for a brief moment, on what is more effective, forgetting or forgetfulness. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, Slater has organized a private island to freely and women while simultaneously killing them if they step out of line, which is, in my opinion, beyond any construct of forgiveness possible. With the amount of pictures Frida discovered, and with it being her second time there, one can only imagine just how many people have came through that island. But when really taking into consideration Slater's words, there lies truth in some of his argument. With how universally praised celebrities can be, as they are held to the expectation of being superhuman and capable of making mistakes, during the time that comes in which they do step out of line, the apology, no matter how lengthy, how honest, or how sincere it comes across to be, never seems to be enough. No matter how sorry they are, the masses remain unforgiving. So while there is merit to Slater's point, for his actions, yeah, forgiveness shouldn't even be in the vocabulary. Before Frida can respond, Sarah comically attempts to kill Slater, with him exiting the room before catching up to her and preparing to kill her, only after delivering this hilarious line.
You think I'm gonna kill you? You're like my best friend. Boop.
And right before he does, he stops and freezes, seemingly plucked from one reality into another, as he now stands in astonishment at the scene in front of him. It had been revealed that the same mind-controlling perfume used on the girls is what Frida put in Slater's vape. After knocking him unconscious, Frida and Sarah escape, but not before Frida strangely decides to save him, dragging him out of a burning inferno despite murdering her best friend and killing countless of other guests. The movie would end where the movie had originally started, at a King Tech fundraiser gala, with the CEO of the company now being revealed to be Frida herself, who has seemingly married Slater, controlling him through the very perfume used on the island and transferring the company into her name, making her a billionaire in the process. Yeah, somehow for a cocktail waitress who is scared shitless for her life to all of a sudden come up with the ingenious plan of enslaving a billionaire to inherit their wealth, it's almost like there is no protagonist in the show, like they're both pieces of shit. Simply had a situation really occurred in real life, me and you, if we were both Frida, would have more than likely curb stomped Slater into the fucking ground. All jokes aside, while I wish I could have said I saw that coming, the ending is a bit far-fetched, and trying to analyze the reasoning other than saying that Frida is a soulless, materialistic, self-indulgent basehead would be an understatement.
Hi guys, as you can see, it's like 2 months later, as you could kind of tell by like the Christmas tree and everything. Basically finishing up like the last portion of the video, and I had tried to make an outro to the video originally, but I had fucked it up so much, so post editing, here I am. But basically what I want to just say, if you made it this far, I really appreciate you, because this video took me so long to edit. I am still very new to editing. I'm learning. I was originally supposed to see the Joker, and then I seen the reviews and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go see this movie instead. If you haven't watched the movie already, I recommend you check it out. It's called Blink Twice. I probably said like a million times, but you know, here it is. I'm not a movie reviewer, so if you're into movie reviews, trust me, this is not a place to be. But I just found the idea of like forgetfulness and the like thematics used overall in the movie, I thought it to be like super interesting. I just didn't think it would take me this long. If you like this video, check out some of my other videos. If not, then you know, thank you for watching, I guess. Really appreciate it. If you liked it, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff, and yeah, bye.